There's an unsettling truth that lurks beneath the surface of human interactions, one that we're often reluctant to acknowledge. People are masters of creating illusions about themselves in their personal relationships. This facade of authenticity is rooted in a deep-seated fear of vulnerability, as well as a desperate need to be accepted and loved by others. Not talking about the obvious manipulation or gaslighting tactics that we've all heard of. Talking about the more insidious ways in which we deceive ourselves and others, often in the most intimate of relationships. In this video, we'll delve into the unsettling psychology behind the quest for authenticity and the destructive power of self-deception, revealing the uncomfortable truths that people rarely say out loud. When we wear masks in relationships, it's often because we're desperate for validation, a constant craving that fuels an insecure ego, a desperate cry for worthiness. We use charm and deceit to mask our true selves because it's less painful to pretend than to risk rejection and emotional vulnerability. Our fear of abandonment drives us to create these facades, a protective shield that shields us from the uncertainty of true connection and intimacy. Behind these masks, hidden agendas reveal themselves, desires for control and dominance that often masquerade as love and care, when in reality they are the very things that choke us to life. Attraction can be a facade as well, a surface-level craving that hides the underlying fear of commitment, attachment, and the risk of getting hurt. By living in a state of self-deception, we deceive not only others, but more importantly, ourselves about our true motives and desires, creating an entire identity that's built on lies, hiding behind an unattainable and ever-shifting facade. When the facade of self-acceptance crumbles, we're left with the stark reality of our insecurities, and it's in those moments that we're forced to confront the masks we've been wearing. The need for validation from others is often a thinly veiled attempt to compensate for our own feelings of inadequacy, a desperate cry for help in a world where our worth is constantly being questioned. Self-deception allows us to momentarily escape the pain of our own fears, but it's a fleeting reprieve, and eventually, the weight of our unacknowledged emotions will come crashing back down. Attraction is often rooted in a desire for connection, but beneath the surface, it can be a cry for validation, a longing for someone to acknowledge our worth and value. The ego's need for control can manifest as a rigid facade of self-confidence, but beneath the bravado, there's often a deep-seated fear of being vulnerable and exposed. In our relentless pursuit of authenticity, we neglect the fact that it's the imperfections, the vulnerabilities, and the raw emotions that make us human, and it's precisely those qualities that can draw others in, rather than the carefully crafted masks we wear. As we navigate the complexities of relationships, we often create masks to conceal our true selves, fearful of vulnerability, but also desperate for validation and connection, a dichotomy that can lead to profound self-deception. When we project perfection to the world, it's not because we're confident in our abilities, but because we're insecure about being found wanting, and we'll stop at nothing to maintain the illusion. Human connection is a primal need, but we often mistake superficial intimacy for the real thing, trading meaningful relationships for fleeting highs of validation and recognition. Our insecurities drive our need for control in relationships, as we attempt to orchestrate the perfect scenario to prove our worth, but in doing so, we only further entrench our insecurities. Authenticity is a two-way street. We crave it in others because we secretly hope they'll see us in all our imperfections and still choose to be with us, but we're often too afraid to offer it ourselves for fear of rejection and exposure. In the end, it's not about putting on a show or maintaining the status quo, but about embracing our imperfections and letting go of the need for perfection. Only then can we truly connect with others on a deeper level. When we're caught up in toxic relationships, it's often the subtle undercurrents of manipulation that allow the facade to persist, but beneath the surface, we're driven by primal desires for validation, security, and control. People in toxic relationships often use charm as a defense mechanism to hide their true motives, but this charm is usually a thin veil for the deep-seated need for admiration and attention. The key to unlocking the dynamics of a toxic relationship is not to focus on the symptoms, but to understand the underlying emotions of insecurity, anxiety, and fear that fuel the need for control. What starts as an attraction to a person's strengths often turns into a toxic obsession with the idea of fixing, changing, or possessing them, a dynamic that's rooted in an unhealthy fusion of our own self-image with theirs. At its core, self-deception in relationships is a coping mechanism for dealing with the painful reality of being vulnerable and exposed to rejection, abandonment, or heartbreak. The moment we surrender to the need to control and manipulate others to get what we crave, validation, intimacy, or a sense of security, we sacrifice the very autonomy and freedom that make intimacy and meaningful relationships possible. When we idealize intimacy, we often overlook the inherent tension between the desire for authenticity and the need for control in relationships. In reality, our pursuit of validation often masquerades as genuine emotional connection, but beneath the surface lies a complex web of insecurities and ego-driven motivations. It's fascinating to note how the quest for deep, meaningful relationships often hinges on our capacity to confront and navigate our own fears of rejection, abandonment, and vulnerability. What strikes me about the dynamics of intimacy is how easily our desire for control can creep in, even when we're trying to be our most authentic selves, often manifesting as the subconscious need to shape and manipulate our partner's emotions and responses. The darker side of attraction reveals itself when we crave emotional intimacy as a means to stabilize our sense of self-worth, using the other person to fill the void left by our own unmet emotional needs. Ultimately, the greatest challenge in achieving genuine intimacy lies in our ability to distinguish between our genuine desire for connection and our desperate need for validation, two impulses that often masquerade as one another. As we reflect on the complexities of authenticity and self-deception, remember that it takes courage to confront the masks we wear. By acknowledging the cracks in our facades, we can begin to build deeper connections and more meaningful relationships. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Don't forget to like, comment with your observations, and subscribe for more human psychology content.